introduction to name and place to help you get started with your project, where I'll show you how names and places closely integrate with each other and how to add and edit the records. Now, as you'll see here, I'm showing you a populated database just to help illustrate the point where, of course, you'll be starting with 0 names and 0 places and 0 sources. So from the dashboard, I'm just going to select a name, Enos Piercy here, who's a good example, and that brings up his name record. Now, each name record and place record and source has a collection of tabs along the top. The names will vary subtly because obviously, for example, we wouldn't have a sources tab on the source, we wouldn't have a places tab on the place, and so on. But the concept is similar in that you can see here at a glance all of the details about this name with numbers next to it to see how many records are behind there. So it opens up in the case of a name record with the name and gender, and you can see here that it's the sort of standard information where you can select a title, gender, and so on. If you want to edit that, which is very similar to the page you'll see if you add a new record, you can just click on edit, change those details, we can select a title in there, and so on. You can also add aliases in here, as many as you like, and if you tick the user's display name box here, that will be the overriding name that record will be displayed by, but with all of the alternatives hidden behind the scenes, so you'll still see them in here. So if I cancel out of that, it takes us back to Enos's record, and you'll see life events. So life events are baptism, birth, marriage, burial, death, the typical life events that we would expect in any sort of research program. And you'll see here that I have a range of records already in place. And for example, you'll see here that we have 2 birth records with 2 different places. And that's really just to highlight that you can have multiple records for each of these events, which could have conflicting information as we would obviously find in our research. So it allows us to record all of that detail, even if it looks contradictory. Enos's true place of birth was Marish's Pickering in Yorkshire, not in Portsmouth. So we'll have a look at this record. Now you'll see as I put the mouse over the place, it's clickable, which is a key difference with a lot of other software packages where the place is simply a text field. What happens here is every time you add an event or a fact, it assigns that event or fact to a place. If that place does not exist in your database, it will add it for you. So if I click onto Marish's Pickering, it takes us across to that Marish's Pickering place record. And as I said, you'll see similar concept here with tabs across the top, but the Places tab has been replaced by a Names tab. If I scroll down, we have address information here. You can have multiple addresses, and very similar to what we saw with the alias, you can have preferred names and addresses, because of a location can of course change its name or address indeed over time. Further down we have a map location where we record the latitude and longitude of every place there. That enables you to pinpoint directly onto a map exactly where a place is, and you're able to move that around. If that latitude and longitude is set for a place, then you're able to view the map. So if I click on that, it shows you the location here, and if Street View is available, you can also click on there and it will open up Street View below. And there we are in the center of Pickering. So that's really just to sort of help you get a sense of the place, or to identify if you're at the right place in the map and so on. You can simply edit the map location by clicking the edit button, and you can come down here, edit the map, whoops, just jumped down too far, edit the map, and now that pointer is active, so I can move that pointer around and move it to another location on the map. Okay, so that's just looking at Enos's place of birth. So how do we get back to Enos? Well, if we look at the names list in the place, you'll see here 23 names. Now, what it's doing here is listing the names associated with Marish's Pickering. So Enos there is the first name. This data actually came from a census, I think the 1851 census, so you can see a number of the events are births. So that's generated from that census data where you've got the year of birth generated via the age on the census and the place of birth. And below you can see there's some additional events for baptisms and marriages that have been added later. But if I click back onto Enos again, that takes us back to his name record, and we can just jump across to facts. Now, facts are a very similar concept to name, but of course it's the facts, to events, but it's the facts element of it. So a fact can be, in this case here, occupation. It could be a post holder, so he was a parish clerk between a certain number of years. It could be a religion, and so on. So you can edit any of these facts, or you can add a new fact. So again, this would be a similar page you'll see when you're just creating a new record. So you can select the fact type. This is a list that we're steadily populating, but it's got a good range to give you a starting point. So you could select a new occupation, for example, and let's say that Enos was a farmer. So if I start to type farmer, you see that all the occupations that we've got in name and place start to appear. Now, this is a self-generating list in that your project will start with some predefined occupations, but then you can add new ones as fits your research. Now, the clever thing about this is again, this is normally a text field in other software. By having it recorded with an actual specific occupation in the database, that then opens up our opportunities later to be able to scale up this information and do analysis by occupation or industry. How many people in your project were farmers? How many people were projects in your farmers in 1851? How many of them were still farmers in your project in 1861? So if you're looking at a place study, for example, that sort of population change becomes very relevant. In your name study, for example, you could look at religion, and you could tie in the religions and just see how they tier up. So that's a sort of concept that we're working on there. As this is version 1, we're looking just at occupations at the moment, but that's something that we're adding more and more intelligence as we go. Facts can have a start and end date, and that's a distinction between facts and events, because an event such as a birth or a baptism happens just once in one time and one location, whereas a fact can have a start and an end date. So logically, an occupation has a start and an end date, marital status, a residence, so in other words, where do you live? You could change religion, and so on. Again, you can add a place. So if I click onto here, I'll get rid of that list, and we will just start typing. Let's say, for example, that Enos was a farmer in Woburn in Bedfordshire. Now, as you'll see, as I typed there, a list of places started to appear in our database. So very similar to what you saw with occupation, that's how we're linking these places. So as I type, that list filters until, in this case, we don't have Woburn in the database. It gives me the opportunity to add Woburn as a new place. So if I click onto there and go down and save changes, I've now created a new occupation for Enos as a farmer in Woburn. I didn't add a start and an end date, so those are blank. Now you'll see that Woburn is now clickable. So this is a new place record we've automatically added. If I jump across to Woburn, it's quite empty because it's obviously we only know the name. We don't have any particular events or facts, sources or media about Woburn, but we do have one name. So if I click on that names tab, there's Enos. The reason Enos is associated with Woburn was he was an occupation of farmer. And that's how we are integrating names and places together. So that's just a short introduction to that concept. I'll be producing more of these videos just to help you get started with your project. And please do contact us. We would love to know how you're getting on with your project. And of course, if you have any questions as we go. Thank you.